When we think about the whole concept of physical danger, our minds usually, default to something incredibly visceral.
Right, something primal.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine you were standing on the edge of this incredibly high diving board.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
Right, you're looking down, the water seems, I don't know, a million miles away, and your heart is just absolutely hammering against your ribs.
Just beating out of your chest.
Exactly. Your palms are sweating, your knees are locking up. Your entire nervous system is essentially screaming at you to just step back from the edge.
Because it's a purely primal response,
Yeah, totally.
Your brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, has basically completely hijacked your rational thought process.
It just takes the wheel.
It really does. Your bloodstream is suddenly flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. And the world just narrows down to this very simple binary choice.
Jump or don't jump.
Exactly. Jump and risk, destruction or retreat to safety. It is just pure, unadulterated survival mode.
And it makes total evolutionary sense why we feel that way on the diving board.
Absolutely.
Because a fall from that height is an actual, literal, physical threat to your life.
Right. Gravity is very real.
It is. But then you take that exact same physiological response, the racing heart, the sweaty palms, that absolute dread, and you map it onto something just completely mundane.
Like a social interaction.
Yes, like picking up a small, rectangle of plastic and glass to call someone you already know.
Phone call.
Just a phone call. Suddenly, that terrifying high dive is just a standard Tuesday afternoon chat. And yet, the sheer terror coursing through your veins feels entirely indistinguishable from standing over a 40-foot drop.
Yeah, that psychological short circuit is exactly what we are dissecting today in this deep dive.
And it's so wild because the physical reality of the fear is completely genuine, right? You are actually sweating. But the threat is entirely manufactured by the mind.
Manufactured is the perfect word.
Right.
Our brains are essentially running this incredibly outdated software program.
Like a really old operating system.
Exactly. An OS where social friction is processed through the exact same neural pathways as a physical injury.
Wow. Wait, so feeling embarrassed is processed like getting punched?
Neurologically speaking, yes. Because to our ancient biology, social rejection meant isolation from the tribe. And back then, isolation meant literal death.
Yeah.
You couldn't survive alone in the wilderness.
So we haven't quite evolved past that wiring yet.
Not at all. We're walking around modern offices with prehistoric threat detection systems.
That brings us perfectly to the source material we are diving into today.
I'm excited for this one.
Me too. We are looking at a brief, but honestly an incredibly dense excerpt. It's titled Fluent Courage: Conquering the Anxiety of Conversation.
It's a great title.
It is. Now, it originates from an English learning program, but, looking at it strictly as a language lesson would be entirely missing the forest for the trees.
Oh, without a doubt.
This text is, it's essentially a Trojan horse. It presents itself as a tool for language learners, but it's actually this profound exploration of pre-conversation anxiety.
Yeah, it gets deep very quickly.
It really does. It gets into the mechanics of avoidance and all these invisible psychological walls we build between ourselves and, genuine human connection.
And it is such a fascinating document precisely because of its brevity. It doesn't waste any time on abstract academic theory.
Right. It gets right down to business.
It grounds these massive psychological concepts in a very specific, agonizingly relatable scenario.
It's a Bruce scenario.
Yes, Bruce. A man who is just paralyzed by the fear of making a grammar mistake with a friend.
Poor Bruce. But honestly, we've all been Bruce.
We have. And Bruce is going to serve as a mirror for us today. Because while Bruce's specific phobia might be English grammar, the actual mechanism of his paralysis that applies to almost any high-stakes interaction you might face in your own life.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to start by looking really closely at the title itself.
The phrasing is very deliberate.
Yeah, Fluent Courage. The juxtaposition of those two words, it bothers me a little bit.
How so?
Well, fluency usually implies this effortless perfection, right? Like a state where things just happen automatically. You don't have to think about it.
Right, you're just flowing.
Exactly. But courage inherently implies a struggle against fear.
It's active.
Very active. So how can those two concepts possibly coexist? If you are fluent, you aren't struggling. But if you are courageous, you are actively terrified.
It almost feels like an oxymoron to me.
It does feel completely contradictory on the surface, doesn't it? And that friction is exactly what makes the phrase so brilliant.
Okay, I'm listening.
To really understand it, we have to look at the mechanics of what fluency actually is. In linguistics, fluency doesn't actually mean perfection.
It doesn't.
No, not at all. It doesn't mean you never make a mistake or that you have memorized every single word in the dictionary. The Latin root of fluency simply means to flow.
Okay, to flow. Yeah. Fluency is a state of unconscious competence, where the mechanics of the language no longer require this massive, taxing cognitive load.
So you aren't, like, doing math in your head before every sentence.
Exactly. You don't have to pause and painstakingly translate every single verb tense in your brain before speaking. The communication just flows, even if it's slightly imperfect.
I see. So the source is taking that linguistic framework and applying it to an emotional state.
Precisely. By pairing fluent with courage, the source is completely shifting the paradigm of how we view bravery.
Because we usually think of courage as, like, a personality trait, right? Like, you're either a brave person or you're a coward.
Exactly. We view it as fixed.
Yeah.
But this text suggests that courage is a capacity. It is a neurological pathway that has to be practiced. It has to be repeated and exercised,
Right.
just like a vocabulary word.
Oh, wow. So you have to drill it.
You do. When you are learning a new language, your first attempts are clunky, right? They're agonizingly slow.
And filled with embarrassing errors, yeah.
Right. And your first attempts at courage are exactly the same. They are awkward and terrifying. But over time, through repeated exposure to the thing that scares you, your brain habituates.
It gets used to the fear.
Yes, the courage begins to flow with less conscious effort. You achieve a fluency in managing your own fear.
Wait, I have to challenge the practicality of that, though.
Go for it.
So the source explicitly frames this around building confidence and conquering anxiety.
Right.
But if fluency requires stumbling through those clunky, agonizing first attempts, aren't we basically saying that to build confidence, you have to start by being entirely unconfident?
That is exactly what we're saying.
But it feels like a paradox. People usually want to feel confident before they take the terrifying action, you know? They want the courage up front.
And you've hit on the exact cognitive distortion that keeps people completely trapped in their anxiety.
Waiting for the confidence fairy to arrive.
Pretty much. We treat confidence as a prerequisite for action. But neurologically speaking, it's almost exclusively the byproduct of action. Yeah. You cannot just sit on your couch and think your way into feeling confident about a terrifying scenario. Your brain requires empirical evidence of survival.
What do you mean by empirical evidence of survival? Like proof that I didn't die?
Literally, yes. Think about the amygdala, our threat detection center, as this incredibly overprotective bodyguard.
Okay, I like that visual.
Right. So when you approach a difficult conversation, that bodyguard perceives a lethal threat. It floods you with anxiety to physically stop you from proceeding.
It's saying, don't go in there, it's dangerous.
Exactly. Now, if you listen to the bodyguard and avoid the conversation, the bodyguard says, see, I kept you safe. I was right to warn you.
Oh, man. So it thinks it did a good job.
It does. And the next time you face that situation, the anxiety will be even stronger because the bodyguard is validated.
That's a vicious cycle.
But if you push through the fear, if you act without confidence and you survive the conversation, you are providing your brain with new empirical data.
You're proving the bodyguard wrong.
Yes. After enough repetitions of surviving the perceived threat, the amygdala downregulates its response.
It turns the alarm volume down.
Exactly. And that downregulation, that lowering of the internal alarm bells, that is what we actually experience as confidence.
Wow.
You have to endure the incompetence and the fear in order to earn the confidence.
That completely flips the script on how we approach difficult situations. I mean, we just sit around waiting for this magical wave of confidence to wash over us.
We do.
We think, oh, I'll make that intimidating phone call tomorrow when I feel more sure of myself.
And then tomorrow comes.
And the fear is exactly the same, if not worse, because we haven't given the brain any new data. We just let the bodyguard win.
And this leads directly to the specific battleground the source identifies. Notice that it doesn't focus on the conversation itself.
Right, it doesn't talk about being in the middle of a chat.
No, the text explicitly highlights, and I quote, practical tips for managing anxiety before a conversation.
Yes. The word before feels like the absolute linchpin of the entire document.
It is the most important word there.
We aren't talking about the anxiety of, like, misspeaking in real time. We are talking about anticipatory anxiety, the feeling on the diving board.
And anticipatory anxiety is arguably a much heavier psychological burden than the actual event itself.
Really? Worse than the event?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to look at the brain's predictive coding to understand why that is.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, The human brain is essentially an incredibly sophisticated prediction machine.
It's always trying to guess what happens next.
Right. It is constantly taking in environmental cues, cross-referencing them with your past experiences, and then projecting potential futures to keep you safe.
So if you see dark clouds gathering, your brain predicts rain, and you grab an umbrella.
Exactly. It's an evolutionary superpower. It keeps us alive.
But in the realm of social interaction, that superpower seems to completely malfunction, right? We aren't predicting rain. We are predicting, like, catastrophic social humiliation.
Yes. And it malfunctions because social variables are infinitely more complex than meteorological ones.
There are just too many unknowns.
Way too many. When you are standing on that metaphorical diving board, preparing to make a difficult phone call, the actual environment around you is usually perfectly safe.
Yeah, you are likely just sitting on your couch in a comfortable room totally alone.
Right. But your brain's predictive machinery is running thousands of simulations of how the conversation could go wrong.
Like Dr. Strange looking at all the possible futures.
Exactly like that.
Yep.
It is generating these hypothetical realities where you stumble over your words, where the other person judges you, where the silence just stretches on agonizingly.
Oh, the awkward silent simulation. That's the worst one.
It's terrible. And because the brain often struggles to distinguish between a vividly imagined threat and a physical reality, your body reacts as if the catastrophe is currently happening.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The theater of the mind takes over completely. The room is totally silent, the phone hasn't even dialed yet, but internally you are sweating through a full-blown disaster.
You live in it.
But I'm trying to reconcile this with our actual ability to handle mistakes.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, I'm wondering, is the anticipatory anxiety before the conversation genuinely worse than the actual experience of making a mistake during the conversation?
Oh, it's not even close.
Really, because if I use the wrong word while talking to someone, it's embarrassing, sure. But is it actually worse than the 30 minutes of dread leading up to it?
Almost without exception, the anticipation is infinitely worse. And there is a very clear psychological mechanism behind this.
I need to hear this.
Real-time mistakes are bounded by reality.
Bounded by reality, okay.
Yes, they are finite. If you trip and fall on the sidewalk, the physical shock is immediate.
Yeah, it hurts for a second.
But your instinctive recovery mechanisms instantly take over. You put your hands out, you brace for impact, you assess the damage, you stand back up. The event has parameters.
You know exactly how bad it is.
Right, but the fear of falling, that is entirely unbounded. It lives in the realm of the imagination, where the fall can be bottomless and the consequences can be eternally devastating.
Oh, wow. That is a critical distinction. Reality has a floor, but anxiety is bottomless.
That's a great way to put it.
Because when you are actually in the conversation, if you make a mistake, you just, like, correct yourself.
Right, you just fix it in the moment.
You say, oh, sorry, that came out wrong, and you move on. The reality of the mistake requires maybe a 3-second recovery, but the anxiety leading up to it, that demands hours of suffering.
And this is exactly why the source text focuses so heavily on the before. If you fail to manage that anticipatory dread, the bounded reality of the conversation simply never gets to happen.
You never even make it to the starting line.
Exactly. The unbounded fear wins by forfeit. And to illustrate the devastating mechanics of this forfeit, the source provides us with this highly specific, deeply revealing case study.
Yes. This brings us to Bruce.
Good old Bruce.
The text introduces a scenario that initially seems, I don't know, incredibly simple. But as we look closer, it contains layers and layers of psychological self-sabotage.
It really does.
The source states, quote, scenario, Bruce avoids calling a friend. Let's just pause right there on the actual mechanism of avoidance itself.
Okay.
Because when the anticipatory anxiety reaches a boiling point, Bruce doesn't just stumble through it. He opts out entirely. He avoids it.
And we need to understand avoidance not just as a casual choice, but as a highly addictive neurological cycle.
Addictive, really?
Extremely addictive. Think about it. When Bruce's brain is running those catastrophic simulations about the impending phone call, his stress hormones are peaking. The psychological pressure is immense.
He's miserable.
Right. So when he finally makes the decision to avoid the call, to just put the phone down and walk away, he experiences a massive, instantaneous rush of relief.
Oh, I know that feeling intimately.
We all do.
You have a meeting you are absolutely dreading, right? And then you get a notification that the other person had to reschedule.
Best feeling in the world.
The wave of relief is almost euphoric. It feels like you just dodged a literal bullet.
It feels like survival. And that is exactly where the danger lies.
Why is that dangerous?
In behavioral psychology, this is known as negative reinforcement.
Okay, negative reinforcement.
You are removing a negative stimulus, the terrifying phone call, and the resulting relief acts as a powerful reward to the brain.
So you're giving yourself a hit of dopamine for bailing out?
Yes, you are chemically rewarding yourself for running away. You are essentially training your own nervous system like a Pavlovian dog.
Oh, wow.
You're reinforcing the neural pathway that says phone calls are mortal threats and avoidance is the only way to survive them.
So the relief is a trap.
A huge trap.
It feels good in the moment, but you are effectively paying off a loan with a credit card. The debt is just compounding in the background.
That's a perfect analogy.
Because the next time Bruce thinks about calling his friend, his brain is going to refer back to this exact moment.
Yep. It's going to say, hey, remember last week? We were in terrible danger until we avoided the call.
So we need to avoid it again, but this time the threat level is even higher because we let it build up.
Exactly. The psychological wall grows taller and thicker with every single act of avoidance. But, the most jarring detail in this scenario isn't just that Bruce is avoiding a call.
Right.
It is who he is avoiding. The text specifically notes that Bruce is avoiding calling a friend.
And this detail completely shifts the context for me. He isn't avoiding, like, a hostile boss or a telemarketer or a stern immigration officer.
Right.
He is avoiding a friend, a relationship that, by definition, is supposed to be rooted in mutual affection and grace.
And the paradox of avoiding a safe harbor is one of the most tragic hallmarks of severe anticipatory anxiety.
It really is sad.
A friendship is a space where the strict rules of performance are supposed to be completely suspended. It is a relationship built on shared history, inside jokes, and an implicit understanding that you accept each other's flaws.
Yeah, your friend is the person most likely to be patient and forgiving with you.
Exactly. And yet, Bruce's anxiety is so overwhelming that it entirely overwrites this established reality.
I want to explore why the brain does this. Why do we lose the ability to perceive a friend as a friend when we are anxious?
It's a fascinating shift in perspective.
It's like, okay, imagine you are trying to learn how to play tennis. You are a complete beginner, you are clumsy, and you keep hitting the ball directly into the net.
Right.
You wouldn't refuse to practice in a quiet, empty park with your best friend just because you aren't ready to play at Wimbledon.
No, of course not.
The empty park is exactly where you are supposed to make mistakes. That's the designated safe zone. So why does Bruce suddenly view his friend as a harsh Wimbledon judge?
To understand this, we have to examine what we might call the narcissism of anxiety.
The narcissism of anxiety, that sounds intense.
Now, I don't mean narcissism in the malicious, ego-driven sense. I mean it in a purely functional biological sense.
Okay, clarify that for me.
When the amygdala perceives a threat, survival protocols demand that the brain's focus narrows entirely onto the self. In a state of intense fear, you cannot afford to expend cognitive energy on understanding someone else's perspective.
You don't have time to be empathetic if you're running from a bear.
Exactly. You must focus entirely on preserving your own safety.
So the anxiety literally blinds him to the other person.
Neurologically, yes. The high-stress state physically inhibits the brain's empathy circuits and theory of mind.
Theory of mind.
Yeah, that's the network responsible for understanding that other people have their own unique, and in this case, forgiving, benevolent thoughts.
Oh, wow.
Bruce is no longer capable of accessing the memory of his friend's kindness. His focus is entirely 100% locked onto his own potential failure.
So the friend ceases to be a complex, empathetic human being.
Right. The friend is reduced to a two-dimensional critical audience.
That is a staggering realization. The anxiety isn't just making him fear the conversation, it is actively altering his perception of reality.
It's distorting it.
It is erasing the friendship in real time. And the tragic irony is that by avoiding the call to protect himself from imaginary judgment, he is creating a very real rift in the relationship.
And this is the secondary trap of avoidance. Avoidance breeds isolation, and isolation breeds shame.
Oh, the shame spiral.
Yes. Bruce avoids the call today. Tomorrow, he wakes up and realizes he hasn't spoken to his friend in weeks. Now, a new layer of anxiety is added. Guilt.
Now he feels like a bad friend.
Exactly. So the next time he contemplates picking up the phone, he isn't just fighting the original fear of the conversation.
He is fighting the crushing weight of his own unexplained absence.
Yes. The avoidance creates the exact alienation he was originally so afraid of.
The emotional interest rates on avoidance are truly bankrupting. I mean, he is sacrificing his connection, his safe harbor, and his own peace of mind.
All for nothing.
Right. And to fully grasp the tragedy of this trade-off, we have to look at the exact phobia that is driving Bruce to dismantle his own friendship. What is the perceived threat that warrants this level of self-destruction?
The source material provides the answer in the second half of that sentence.
Right, let's read it.
Bruce avoids calling a friend, quote, because he's worried about making grammar mistakes.
Grammar mistakes.
What's fascinating here is that the text moves from a simple scenario into a brilliant commentary on perfectionism.
It really does.
We have to analyze how a purely structural tool, grammar, has been weaponized by Bruce's own mind to completely sever human connection.
Let's break down what grammar actually is in this context, because in the realm of linguistics, grammar is just the scaffolding, right?
Right, it's just syntax.
It's the agreed-upon set of rules we use to organize our thoughts so that another person can decipher them. It is supposed to be a bridge between two people.
But Bruce isn't using it as a bridge.
No, he's using it as a barrier.
The distinction between syntax and semantics is crucial here.
Okay, let's define those for the listener.
Syntax is the structural rule book. It's verb conjugation, subject-verb agreement, preposition placement.
The technical stuff.
Right. Semantics, on the other hand, is the actual meaning. It's the emotion, the core message you are trying to convey to the other person.
A human element.
Exactly. And in any organic human interaction, semantics vastly outweigh syntax.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, if you say to a friend, I am go to the store yesterday, your syntax is completely broken.
It's terrible grammar. Yeah.
But your semantics are perfectly clear. The friend understands exactly what you mean. You went to the store. The time and the action are communicated.
So the meaning survives the structural collapse of the sentence.
Exactly. The human brain is incredibly adept at parsing broken syntax to extract the underlying meaning.
We do it all the time without thinking.
We do. But Bruce has entirely inverted the hierarchy of communication. He has convinced himself that the rules of the language are more important than the purpose of the language.
Wow.
He has made flawless syntax the absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for sharing semantic meaning.
I mean, I see the logic of his fear, especially if he is an English learner, as the source implies.
So there's context.
The society does often penalize poor grammar. People are judged for it in professional settings or on the internet.
That's true.
But we are talking about a friend here. Why is he clinging so desperately to the rigid rules of syntax in a relationship that absolutely doesn't require them?
Because the grammar is providing him with an illusion of control.
An illusion of control.
Yes. When you strip away the mechanics of language, human connection is inherently chaotic. It's unpredictable and profoundly vulnerable.
You can't script it.
No.
No.
You cannot control whether your friend is going to find your joke funny, or whether they will validate your feelings, or honestly, whether they will eventually drift away from you over time.
That lack of control is terrifying for an anxious mind.
It's paralyzing.
Huh.
But grammar is a fixed system. You can memorize the rules of the past perfect tense. You can perfectly control your verb conjugations.
Ah. So by obsessing over the grammar, he is trying to exert control over the chaotic nature of the relationship itself.
Precisely. It is a defense mechanism. Bruce's brain is like a corrupted predictive text algorithm.
Ooh, I like that.
Because he feels deeply insecure about his value in the relationship, his anxiety has programmed the algorithm to autocomplete every single interaction with catastrophic rejection.
So it's always predicting the worst.
Right. The algorithm says, I will use the wrong preposition, which means my friend will realize I am incompetent, which means my friend will lose respect for me, which means I will be abandoned.
That escalated quickly.
It always does with anxiety. He is obsessing over the first domino, the preposition, because he is absolutely terrified of the final one.
So what does this all mean for us? This completely reframes the idea of perfectionism.
It does. It strips away the glamour.
Yeah, because we usually disguise perfectionism as this virtue, right? Like a commitment to excellence. We say things like, oh, I just want to get it exactly right before I send this email.
Or I just want to make sure my pitch is flawless before I speak up in the meeting.
Exactly. But looking at Bruce, perfectionism isn't about excellence at all. It is a shield.
A very heavy shield.
It is a desperately deployed armor to protect ourselves from the vulnerability of being seen as flawed, messy, and fundamentally human.
Perfectionism demands an absolute guarantee of success before it allows an attempt. It is the enemy of action.
It just freezes you.
And the irony, the truly devastating irony of Bruce's situation, is that in his obsessive quest to avoid a minor technical error, he is committing a massive, total communication failure.
He is so terrified of a slightly bumpy flight that he refuses to ever leave the tarmac.
And by refusing to leave the tarmac, he is actively denying his friend something incredibly vital to the health of any relationship.
What's that?
He is denying his friend the opportunity to be generous.
Wait, really? I'm not sure I follow that leap. How does making a grammar mistake allow the other person to be generous?
Okay, we have to look at the psychology of vulnerability and trust building here. There is a well-documented psychological phenomenon known as the pratfall effect.
The pratfall effect. Okay.
It states that an individual's attractiveness or likability actually increases after they make a small, clumsy mistake.
Really? Like dropping a coffee cup?
Yeah, exactly. Provided they are generally perceived as competent in the first place, the mistake humanizes them. It makes them relatable.
So perfection is actually alienating.
Deeply alienating. A flawlessly polished facade is intimidating. It creates distance between people.
Like talking to a robot.
Right. When you converse with someone and you struggle to find a word, or you use the wrong tense, and the other person patiently listens or gently helps you find the right phrase, a microbond of trust is formed.
That makes so much sense.
You signaled vulnerability. You basically said, I am struggling here. And they responded with grace. They said, I am here and I understand you anyway.
Wow.
That exchange of vulnerability and grace is the very bedrock of intimacy.
That completely shatters Bruce's entire premise.
It really does.
I mean, he is operating under the assumption that a flawless, grammatically perfect phone call is the ideal state of friendship. But you're saying that a messy, stumbling, imperfect call actually creates a deeper connection because it requires mutual effort and empathy.
Yes. By insisting on perfection, Bruce is building a wall of sterile professionalism where there should be messy human connection.
He's making it a transaction.
Exactly. He is saying to his friend, I do not trust you enough to let you see me stumble. He is robbing the friendship of those vital microbonds. His anticipatory anxiety has convinced him that his friend is a harsh auditor, just waiting to deduct points for every flawed sentence.
When in reality, the friend is probably just sitting at home, wondering why Bruce hasn't called and feeling rejected themselves.
Exactly. It's a tragedy of misaligned perceptions.
Bruce is hiding to protect the friendship, and the friendship is starving to death because he's hiding.
Which brings us back to the ultimate mission of the source text. How do we achieve fluent courage?
Right, how do we get out of the trap?
How do we break this cycle of anticipatory dread, perfectionism, and avoidance? The text promises practical tips, but the most profound pip is hidden in the shift of perspective we've just discussed.
It seems like the first practical step has to happen in that agonizing window before the conversation, right? When the brain is running its worst-case simulations.
That's the crucial intervention point.
Because if the anxiety is driven by a corrupted predictive algorithm, we have to consciously rewrite the code?
Exactly. The psychological term for this is cognitive reappraisal.
Cognitive reappraisal.
When you feel that adrenaline spike and you catch your brain simulating the disaster like, I'm going to use the wrong word and my friend will judge me, you have to actively interrupt the simulation.
You have to hit pause.
Yes. You must interrogate your own anxiety. You literally ask yourself, is this prediction based on historical evidence?
Has my friend ever actually mocked my speech before?
Exactly. If I do make a grammatical error, what is the actual objective consequence?
The objective consequence is that the friend says, wait, I didn't quite catch that. Do you mean you went yesterday or you are going tomorrow?
That is the reality. A momentary need for clarification. That is the terrifying monster under the bed that Bruce has been running from all this time.
Just a slight misunderstanding.
Right. When you force your brain to confront the objective reality of the mistake, rather than the catastrophic simulation of the mistake, the threat shrinks.
The 40-foot diving board becomes a 6-inch curb.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And you can easily step off a curb.
And that act of stepping off the curb, making the call despite the lingering discomfort, accepting that your grammar will not be perfect, that is the actual practice of fluent courage.
That's the reps.
It is prioritizing the semantics of connection over the syntax of perfection. It is choosing the messy, unpredictable reality of a relationship over the sterile, lonely safety of avoidance.
It is recognizing that the purpose of communication is not to prove your competence, but to share your humanity.
That's beautiful.
The source material is incredibly profound because it takes a common, frustrating hurdle just learning the rules of a language, and reveals it as a microcosm of our deepest existential fears.
Yeah, Bruce's struggle with grammar is fundamentally a struggle with vulnerability.
As we bring this deep dive in for a landing, I want to recap the immense journey we've taken through these few lines of text.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We started by dismantling the paradox of fluent courage, realizing that bravery is not an innate trait but a practiced capacity.
Right, it's a muscle.
We explored the evolutionary trap of anticipatory anxiety, understanding how our brain's predictive machinery misinterprets social friction as a literal threat to our survival.
And then we watched Bruce fall into the seductive but toxic cycle of avoidance, driven by the negative reinforcement of temporary relief.
That dopamine hit of canceling plans.
Exactly. We analyzed the narcissism of anxiety, which blinded him to the safe harbor of his friendship.
And finally, we unpack the devastating illusion of perfectionism, how Bruce weaponized the structural rules of grammar to protect himself from vulnerability, ultimately denying his friend the chance to offer grace and deepen their connection.
The core lesson here is that building confidence does not mean waiting till you feel perfectly equipped to handle a situation.
You'll be waiting forever.
You really will. Confidence is the psychological reward you receive after you choose to act in spite of your fear. You have to endure the clumsy, awkward first attempts.
You have to make the mistakes.
You have to stumble over your syntax to get your semantics across. The scraped knee of a real-time mistake is infinitely preferable to the bottomless, agonizing fall of perpetual avoidance.
The goal is not flawless execution. The goal is genuine connection. And connection requires you to be visible, flaws and all.
As we leave you today, I want to offer you one final lingering thought. Something to just carry with you the next time you find yourself staring at your phone, hovering over a draft email, or hesitating outside a meeting room, feeling that familiar, paralyzing dread creeping into your chest. Think about Bruce's friend for a second. We've spent this entire deep dive analyzing Bruce. We've dissected his anxiety, his desperate perfectionism, his fear of judgment, but I want you to entirely flip the script. Imagine that you are the friend. You are sitting at home, the phone rings, and it's Bruce. You haven't heard from him in weeks. He starts talking, and his English is broken. He uses the wrong verb tense. He completely scrambles his prepositions. He stumbles over his words, clearly nervous, clearly struggling to articulate his thoughts.
Yeah.
If you were that friend, would you sit there judging his syntax? Would you mentally deduct points from his character for every structural error? Would you reject him? Or would you just be profoundly, deeply thrilled to finally hear his voice?
Wow.
Why do we relentlessly, mercilessly hold ourselves to a standard of flawless perfection that we would never in a million years dream of imposing on the people we care about? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.